ॐ निरञ्जनं नित्यम् अनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमिड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शीर्षा नमः. Namaste everyone and welcome to our study of the Vedanta lectures of Swami Vivekananda. We are studying Swami Vivekananda's wonderful lecture on the Vedanta delivered in 1897 November in Lahore. This is the third class on this particular lecture. So we are looking in here. Let me enlarge that a little bit more. Okay. So we had, I think, studied up to, read and discussed up to here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll continue. But just a quick view, like way, just looking at the subtitles of the topics, gives an idea where Swamiji is leading us. Before this, we had a look at a little bit of introduction to the cosmology and the psychology. That's the background of the Vedanta philosophy. And then he takes us into inwards, talks about the principle of prana, which is the uh, most generalized form of energy behind the whole universe. And the most generalized form of matter is akasha. Then he uses that to talk about the mind. And the mind is not a product of the organ called brain, but it is a spark or part of the cosmic mind. Then he will talk about something beyond the mind, the Atman, the real man, of which the human is only an expression temporarily. Then he works through the antakarana, the mind. How does it work? How the mind is the inner organ, which is made of chitta, manas, buddhi, and ahankara. And then he will talk about how knowledge is formed. Knowledge is not just some information coming from outside, but on whatever is coming out from outside, the X, on that we superimpose the mind, the conditioning of the mind. So everyone colors whatever they perceive through the with the color of their own lenses, the lenses, which is the conditioned mind. And then he talks about the river of change. Everything here is changing, but behind that is the unchangeable one. And the unchangeable witness is a spiritual entity, not a material entity. And the supreme being is indestructible. The Atman and the Paramatman are one and the same. He talks about some quotations from the Gita about the nature. And then he talks about how evolution happens. And 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 these three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, that make a prakriti out of which this whole universe is formed. Then he talks about the doctrine of the Atman. What is the nature of the Atman and the power? Just to give you a quick rundown through what are the topics that will be, so that you get our picture. Then we'll go into the details of it. So let us look at section 11, subsection 11, prana in motion. The Kathopanishad also talks about it on what is projection. Projection means the word srishti in Sanskrit. Srishti, sthiti, samhara. Srishti means not creation. Creation means something was not existing there, you created it. But the word here is projection. And its opposite, samhara, means it resolves back to its course. Something that was in the potential form now has taken some form, and that form remains for a while, that is sthiti, and then it resolves back to its course, which is samhara. So Swamiji quotes the Kathopanishad, which says, Yadidam kincha jagat sarvam prana ejati nisritam. This is from the Kathopanishad. Everything in this universe, jagat sarvam, yad idam, in this means yad idam, kinchit, whatever it is there, jagat sarvam, in this universe, has been projected. Prana ejati nisritam. Projected means the word nisritam means is projected. And what was projected? How did it come? By the prana vibrating. So if whoever has got the mic on, please switch it off. Yeah, so prana is vibrating, vibrations. And that's why in one of the courses we have put, we are discussing about the mind and its care. One of the subtopics is the understanding of mind according to Kashmir Shaivism, which goes into this concept in quite deep detail, which says that everything in this world is energy, or energy is the English word, is Shakti, okay, or power, cosmic power. So the divine is not just something sitting down there, but it is intensely active in the, and when it's creating, projecting, and some reabsorbing, that entity or that being is described as the Divine Mother, as Shakti, as a feminine principle. And Brahman is when it is in the potential format. So everything in this universe has been projected. And how? Because of the vibrations of prana. Swamiji says, you must mark the word ejati because it comes from the word eja, to vibrate. Nishritam means projected. Yadidam kincha is whatever is in this universe. So this is a part of the cosmology side of the Vedanta. That means, how did this universe come? This is an eternal question that everyone asks, whether the philosophers in the ancient times, and we find the Greek philosophers discussing about these things, about the external world, or people discussed about the internal world with the psychiatrists, psychologists, and they discussed it. Whether in the modern day, people are trying to say, where did this universe come from? And how is it taking shape? What is holding it together? So that's the cosmology part of it. There are many details working into it. For instance, how the process takes place, how there is the first ether, that means the akasha, and from the ether come other things, how that ether begins to vibrate, and from that vayu comes. Vayu is the air, one of the five elements. But the one idea, so the details are there, from if you start from the akasha and prana, which is at the highest level, and then we end up with this gross material, concrete, tangible world, which are perceived by the five senses. What is the process? How did it vibrate forth? What stages it, and what governs that movement? Those are the details. So you'll find that in the Upanishads and all that, the sages did not really go down to all the nitty-gritty about the details. They were more interested in the universal principles that were guiding it. So, but the one idea is here is that it is from the finer that the grosser comes. So that's an important idea. Something very causal is there, then it becomes a little bit more gross, and ultimately it becomes this world of gross matter that we are familiar with because we are perceiving it through the five senses. So gross matter is the last to emerge and the most external, and this gross matter had the finer matter before it. Like before ice, it was water. Before water, it was water vapor. Let's use that analogy. Yet we see that the whole thing has been resolved into two. Resolve means it has gone back into. Ice goes into water and means ice has been resolved into water. Water goes into water vapor that has been resolved into it. So at the time of pralaya, the cosmic dissolution, all the physical material world that we see around here on this planet or in our solar system or in our Milky Way or in the whole universe will melt down, so to say. Melt down means its energy will begin to increase, the heat will increase, it will resolve back to its course. So that's the idea of pralaya, which the Vedic sages had long talked about. Yet we see that the whole thing has been resolved into two, but there is not yet a final unity. So earlier we had talked about, Swamiji said that everyone is trying to find what is that one out of which everything has come. Up to here, it has been resolved to two, Akasha and Prana. It's not the unity. Is there any unity to be found among them again? Can they be melted into one? Our modern science is mute here. It has not yet found its way out. And if it is doing so, just it just as it has been slowly finding the same old prana and the same ancient akasha, it will have to move along the same lines. Same lines means this idea of the gross coming out of the subtle. So if you look at our modern day science, our scientists are trying to take an approach which is called reductionism. You keep on breaking things into their constituents until it cannot be broken any further, and then we will say that that is the ultimate matter or particle out of which everything has come. So they are splitting the molecules to atoms, and atoms blasting them through these particle accelerators that they're building for billions of dollars, and coming out with all these quarks and subatomic particles and etc. that we now and then read in the scientific discoveries. So Swamiji says the quest of the Vedic teachers, seekers, was to go even beyond the Akasha and the Prana. Then he takes up this subtopic of the mind. The next unity is the omniscient impersonal being known by its mythological name Brahma, the four-headed Brahma, and psychologically called Mahat. So this is what our Vedanta says. Look, Akasha and Prana resolve into their cause. What is that cause? That cause is the cosmic mind or Mahat. Mahat means that which is great, Maha, universal. So, what is our mind? That you and I have a separate minds. These are like little whirlpools in the river of the cosmic mind. The cosmic mind is the continuum in which we experience ourselves a little like a whirlpool in the river. So, in our mythology, we say because it's about creation and the creator, so that being is known as Brahma. Now, Brahma, you'll see in the pictures of photographs, not photographs, in paintings and drawings, he has got four heads. These four heads or four mouths represent the four Vedas, Chatur Veda. Okay, so the whole universe we have discussed in the past, according to Swami Vivekananda's explanation, has come from the subtle part of it, the Shabda state of some things. I had taken a full class on that, where Swamiji said that the Vedas, the word Veda doesn't mean the book, but it means the sum total of all the spiritual truths that have been discovered by Vedic teachers. And those later on, those teachings are recorded in books, and people begin to understand the Vedas to be meaning the books, but really it is the principles, truths that are mentioned or discussed or taught and communicated through these books. That is the real meaning of the Vedas. And Brahma, Lord Brahma, is the one who gave this Veda. Where did he receive the Veda from? He received it from his teacher, the Supreme Being. There's a beautiful pranam mantra that we students and sadhus chant before we take up any study, seeking the blessings of that Supreme Being, so that when a study like this becomes fruitful, will become fruitful when we'll be able to assimilate, grasp the teachings given by the Supreme Being through the scriptures. And it goes like, Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam, Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahnoti Tasmai, Tamahadevam Atma Buddhi Prakasham, Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadhe. So we pray to that Supreme Being, who, Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam, who created Lord Brahma. And after creating him, Yovai Vedansi Prahanoti Tasme. To him, to Brahma, he imparted the Vedas. Means he showed him imparted the knowledge. Not the knowledge, but it's not just an intellectual knowledge, it is the grasp of the subtle principles which Brahma then uses to create this universe. Tamha Devam Atma Buddhi Prakasham, to that supreme divine being, I pray. For what? Atma Buddhi Prakasham. I am praying for you to please illuminate my intellect, because with that intellect I would be able to grasp those teaching. And who am I? Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadhe. I'm a mumukshu, I'm a seeker of freedom, and I take refuge in you. I take refuge in the Supreme Being. So the explanation or the meaning is, I take refuge in the Supreme Being to bless me with this in spiritual intelligence, so that to which being, so that I can achieve freedom. To which being? One who created the whole universe, and including Brahma, and one who imparted the spiritual truths to him. So that is Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is depicted in pictures and all that, but really, in psychologically, it means the cosmic mind. The sum total of all the minds is the cosmic mind, and those who have access to that realm would be able to read and access the contents of all minds, the past and present and future. And there's an interesting incident. Many a time, a couple of incidents come to my mind. One, Swamiji was teaching a group of sincere seekers at the Thousand Island Park retreat. He took a break, and got a few sincere devotees, disciples followed him there. They were students, not disciples, and they were attending classes like this. But some of them became very interested to go deeper and said, Swamiji, would you be our teacher? Would you accept us as students? And Swamiji would not do that unless somebody would express that interest. And that would mean that he will have to take over the spiritual responsibility of those students also. So it's not just giving a mantra and then forgetting that. With that comes a huge responsibility of the teacher to take care of them until they attain freedom and mukti. So Swamiji, in that books, it's written there, the inspired talks, you'll see. So for those who received the mantra, Swamiji would ask them, will you please, if you give permission, I would like to read a little bit of your mind. And of course, they would say yes. And then he will just hold the hand or something, and then he will tell them many things about their life. This is how you grew up, important highlights or things like that. You met this, you're this, and they would say, yeah. And all of them, they'll be confirmed. And basically, what he was trying to do was to understand the mind, so that, just like a doctor, will do a full analysis to understand what is the cause, what's the health, and what is the illness of the patient. And then he can prescribe the appropriate remedy for that particular patient. Likewise, a spiritual teacher also does not just give the same medicine to everyone. Everyone's mind and samskaras and prarabdha and stage of spiritual growth is different. So they find out what is the appropriate support or help that they need, and accordingly they guide them in that way. And how would they do that? The reason I brought this up is, look, if the minds were disconnected, then you could never access what happened in another person's life. But great spiritually evolved souls, they can access that cosmic mahat and then get to know what the past lives and experiences of a person. Sri Ramakrishna would not even need to do that. He would look at a person and he would say, and know what is in the mind. He'd say, I can see the contents of the mind, just like things kept in a showcase, glass case. That means he sees the mind itself, not just the body, and beyond that also. That is a power of an avatara incarnation. So this is the Akasha and Prana merge into Mahat. This is where the two are the Akasha and Prana, they unite. What is called your mind Okay, so there are some people who would be very much interested in this. Here in my mind is only a bit of this Mahat caught in the trap of the brain, and the sum total of all minds caught in the meshes of brains is what you call samasti, the aggregate or the universal. Important idea. Let's repeat that. What we call the mind is only a bit of this cosmic mind, the Mahat, but caught in the trap of the brain. So that means it is one way to visualize is visualize a river flowing. And in that river, you'll find some little eddy currents, little whirlpools are circulating along. Your and our minds are like that bundle of little energy. And it is that energy that is constantly taking in water and throwing it out, but the energy keeps on flowing. And likewise, at the end of one life, we take up, throw off this physical body, and then it sucks in a new matter and creates a new body in the next lifetime. And that's how it requires, it just flows on. The energy flows on, but it requires the liquid water as the medium. That will be the equivalent to the akasha. So different minds, a river has got so many, so many, so many whirlpools, and the sum total of all these whirlpools, the sum total of all the minds is called samasti, the aggregate, the universal. So we have come across the idea of akasha and prana. Akasha and prana merge into the cosmic mind, and in that cosmic mind, our individual minds are called vyasti, and the sum total is called samasti, Sanskrit terms. So the sum total is called the Mahat. Analysis has to go further. It was not yet complete. Here we were each here we are each one of us, as it were, a microcosm, and the world taken together is the macrocosm. That's easy to understand. But whatever is in the Vesti, that means the microcosm, we may safely conjecture that a similar thing is happening also outside, that means in the macrocosm. If we had the power to analyze our own minds, we may safely conjecture that the same thing is happening in the cosmic mind. So that is a very important principle in the Vedanta spiritual teachings. We will find that in one of our Upanishads. Shaunaka, one is a great spiritual student, very well accomplished in all things, all streams, all fields of knowledge in this world. He is desirous of knowing what is that one knowing which everything is known, and goes and asks the teacher, Kasmin no bhago vijnate sarvamidam vijnatam bhavati iti. What is that knowing which everything becomes known? And the teacher will say, okay, where are you going to seek for that? Does it mean that you go around looking, analyzing everything in this universe? Time is not on our side. We don't have the skill. So they give the example in the Upanishads, and it goes like this. If you take a piece of clay and analyze it, understand what that piece of clay is, then you have understood all the clay in the world. If you take a piece of gold and analyze what that small piece is, then you have understood what is the nature of gold throughout the world. If you're cooking rice and you want to understand whether the rice has been cooked or not, you don't go around pressing every grain to test whether it's fully cooked. You take one grain and you press it, and mothers do all the time, and then they come to a conclusion all the grains have been cooked. They use this example to say that, look, if you understand your own mind, you will understand the nature of the mind, the universal mind also, how all other minds function. And if you understand the nature of the reality within you, that means what's beyond the mind, the consciousness, what we call the Atman, then you'll also know the nature of the consciousness behind the whole universe. And there you'll find that the Atman and Brahman, the microcosmic Atman, individual Atman, consciousness, the microcosmic the consciousness in the microcosm or the individual is called Atman. The consciousness behind the universal, the macrocosm, is called Brahman, but really they are the same. I am Atma, Brahma. So these are very, very important principles because they guide us the pathway by which we are going to realize the highest truth. The Vedanta approach is diving deep within our own self. Go beyond, understand your own mind, and you'll understand the minds of others also. If you experience yourself as the Atman, you'll understand what is the Atman in everyone else. That is not how the Western world or the scientific Western science approaches the world. We go around analyzing anything and everything. As a result of there are so many hundreds of disciplines in science and all that, biology, chemistry, physics, and this and that. Then there's sub uh, fields and all that. They are going into greater and greater specialization. They might know some few things more about, but then they don't know the rest of it. Just like we have got doctors who are specialists in certain eye specialist or heart specialist or whatever, but he doesn't understand the whole body in its totality. So when he treats that one part of it, not holistically. So the Vedanta approach is to understand, comes from this understanding that our own mind is a part of the cosmic mind. What is this mind in the question? In modern times, in Western countries, as physical science is making rapid progress, as psychology is step by step conquering stronghold after stronghold of all religions, the Western people do not know where to stand because, to their great despair, modern psychology at every step has identified the mind with the brain, and it's still the same thing. And based on this understanding, they approach all the issues and problems of the mind, depression and all those things, by trying to treat the brain with chemicals so that whatever the electrical activity or chemical activity in the brain is restored with the aim to restore the illnesses or disturbances in the mind. That's how they're approaching. But we in India have known that always. That is the first proposition the Hindu boy learns, that the mind is matter and only matter. So here is this reconciliation. This idea that the mind and the brain are two different things, that the brain produces the mind, are is a Western approach. The Vedanta approach is say there is one thing, one ocean of matter, only one is finer and the other is grosser. What is that finer? Meaning of the finer? Finer would mean that its vibration is at a higher frequency. And when its vibration comes down to a lower frequency, we call it matter. And when its vibration goes to a higher frequency, we call it mind. But there's a continuum. There's no line of demarcation which says here matter ends and there mind or spirit or mind or spirit starts. There's that is just these are terms that we are using, and then people sometimes begin to think that they're just separate things. As happens like the atmosphere, we say, oh, this stratosphere and ionosphere and all these spheres. How do they define that? Oh, so many kilometers of the space is this, and then next so many kilometers is that. They're not actually any real lines separating them. They're just for purpose of defining things so that we can talk about them. But whatever exists as a whole continuum. Likewise, the electromagnetic spectrum. We have got the radio waves, and then you got the audio waves, and you got the visual spectrum, got the X-rays and the microwaves and the gamma rays. But whatever is, there is a whole constant, continuous spectrum. So when we use these definitions and words, people sometimes begin to think that they are really different things. Actually, they're different. That's a nature limitation of the mind because it cannot grasp the whole thing in totality. So it has to break them into parts. And later on, people think that really it is in parts and then try to combine it back. So that is the first proposition the Hindu boy learns. What is that? That the mind is matter only finer. Okay. For those who want to understand this a little deeper, they may look in the introduction to Swami Vivekananda's commentary on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And there he talks about prana and psychic prana. You'll find them in the lecture here. On the lecture, where is that? Rhythm meditation course, where I have given the whole of that introduction. Let me just show you. No, no. I'll show you afterwards. Okay, so the body is gross, and behind the body is what we call the sukshma sharira, or the subtle body. Sharira means body. The gross body is called, anyone? Sanskrit? Sthula Sharira. Sthula Sharira is the gross body. The subtle body or the mental body is called Shukshma Sharira. And behind that, even finer, that is the cause out of which it has come, is called the Karan Sharira. So learn these few terminologies. The gross body, the body is gross, and behind the gross body is what we call the Sukshma Sharira, the fine body or the mind. So when in Vedanta we say about mind, it's not exactly in the same way as it understood by the English word. Our understanding is there is a subtle body, sukshma sharira, which consists of something called manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. Four aspects of that inner organ, functional aspects are there. We'll discuss that there. But just keep in mind that behind the gross body is the subtle body, and the subtle and the gross body are not like two separate things, but it's just a continuum of energy and akasha and prana. That understanding will help us the Vedantic teachings later on. This is also material. So is the mind material? Yes, but only finer. So everything that is in Prakriti is Akasha and Prana. Okay, made of the three gunas. The difference is what we call the physical world around us, studied through the physical sciences, conceived or perceived through the five sensory organs, eyes to see, ears to hear, etc. That is the lower end of that spectrum. At the other
Swamiji,
end,
Swamiji, the Karan Sharir, that is that also material?
yeah, Sharira, all bodies are,
Okay.
yeah. And the idea you see is that mukti means to go beyond the three bodies altogether. Atman is no body. So all this Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karan Sharira are different bodies. Just for the purpose of understanding, these definitions are given there. Keep in mind all the time, it's one continuum. And 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 this is also the Sukshma Sharira, Karan Sharira only are meta, but only fina. And the Atman is something that is non-material. We'll keep that in mind. Okay, so there is something which is not material, beyond Prakriti, and that is pure consciousness. So he talks about the Atman, then he starts talking about what is this Atman. I will not translate this word to you in English because the idea does not exist in Europe. It is untranslatable in English. The modern attempt of German philosophers to translate the word Atman by the word self with a capital S, you'll find this is used when they are writing commentaries or studying the Upanishads. They'll use uh, the word self with a capital S to denote the spiritual entity behind this human individual being, the microcosm. So they use this word. And until that word is universally accepted, it is impossible to use it because different people mean different things. Some people think that the sense of individuality that I have associated with this body and personality, that is the self. They don't mean the Atman, which is the non-material entity, the consciousness by the word self. So many times you'll find that definitions themselves, if they are not properly universally accepted, become problematic because each one understands in their own way. So call it the self or anything, it is our Atman. Let's use the Atman. This Atman is the real man behind. That means this consciousness. So if that is the real man, then what is the man that we see in front of us, around us as people? Well, that is called the apparent man. There's a lecture of Swami Vivekananda. Maybe we'll take that one up, next one. The real and the apparent man. Atman is the real and everything else, gross, subtle, and causal, including the ego and everything, that bundled together is called the apparent man that has been superimposed on the real man. The real man is like, Vedanta teaching, it is like the rope on which has been superimposed the snake. So call it okay, this Atman is the real man behind. It is the Atman that uses, okay, the Atman that uses this material mind as its instrument. It's Antakarna. Anta means inner, Karna means organ. It's inner organ. So what is the outer organ? Well, we got organs of perception and organs of action. Uh, Karma indriyas and jnana indriyas. They are embedded, you can see them in the physical body, in the brain. But beyond that is the inner organ, antakarana, mana buddhi, chitta, ahankara. These are the things. We'll discuss that in a little later. And so this Atman is a real man. It is Atman that uses the material mind as its instrument, its antakarna, as is the psychological term for the mind. Okay, in Vedanta, psychological time is antakarna. And the mind, by means of a series of internal organs, works these physical organs of the body. Okay, so whatever thought is there, they begin to translate. Like I have some certain thoughts and I'm speaking, or I move my hands, or whatever is there. So it is this antakarna, by a series of internal organs, works the visible organs or limbs of the mind. What is this mind? It was only the other day that the Western philosophers have come to know that the eyes are not the real organs of vision, but that behind these are other organs, the indriyas. And if these are destroyed, a man may have 1,000 eyes like Indra, but there will be no sight for him. So, of course, in this age and time, we doctors also say somebody has got a perfect pair of eyes or ears, but they can't see or hear because there's some problem deep in the brain. And so light coming from outside enters the eyes do their job perfectly. They converge that light on the retina and convert that into where the rods and cones, the cells are there that convert that into electrical signals. That part, the physical organ is doing all right, but still no perception is happening because some problem is there in an inner level, which is called the indriyas. Indriyas don't reside in the actual external organ, but in the internal organ. So Swamiji says, uh, there will be no sight for him. Hey, your philosophy starts with this assumption that by vision is not meant the external vision. The real vision belongs to the internal organs, the brain centers inside. So if that is damaged for whatever reason, then you might have perfect instruments outside, but still perception will not take place. So you may call them what you like, but it is not the indriyas, but it is not that the indriyas are the eyes or the nose or the ears. And the sum total of all these indriyas plus the manas, buddhi and chitta and ahankara is what is called the mind. So this is the definition of the mind according to Vedanta. Mana, buddhi, chitta and ahankara. We'll discuss them in the next section, what they really mean. Plus those centers in the brain where these electrical signals from outside are delivered. They together all form what is called the mind according to Vedanta. And if the modern psychologist comes to tell you that the brain is what is called the mind, and the brain is formed of so many organs, you need not be afraid at all. Tell him that your philosophers knew it all, always. It is one of the very first principles of your religion. So he's talking it to the Indian audience, where he's trying to show or tell them how to reconcile the Western scientific approach, understanding of the mind with the ancient Vedic understanding. So, what are one of the things you have to dwell on, think about it? This particular definition. Okay, keep this in mind. It will be very useful later on. The sum total of all these indriyas, where do these indriyas reside? In the brain centers, plus manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, etc. The internal antakarna is what is called the mind, understood by the word mind in the Vedanta uh, perspective, understanding of. So far, so good. All right, looks like everyone is quiet. So, how does the mind work then? We have defined, sort of said what this mind is made of. How does it work? Well, then, we have to understand now what is meant by this mana, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara. First of all, let us take the chitta. It is the mind stuff, a part of the mahat. It is a generic name for the mind itself, including all its various states. So his Swamiji introduces the word, tries to take this, what is called chitta. Remember, in the second verse of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, uses this word, chitta vritti, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti. Chitta, the word is there. Mind stuff. Vritti, little whirlpools. Nirodha. Let there be a pond of water without any waves. Let there be a river flowing without any whirlpools. That constant, that steady flowing without any disturbances. That state, when the mind flows like that, that is called yoga. Anyway, let's look at what chitta is here. It is the mind stuff, a part of the mahat. It is the generic name for the mind itself, including all the various states. Suppose on a summer evening, there is a lake, smooth and calm, without a ripple on its surface. And suppose someone throws a stone into this lake. What happens? First, there is the action. Action means some energy has been imparted. Where was the energy? In the muscles of the person. He decided to transmit and disturb the water. He transmits that energy into the pebble. The pebble becomes the vehicle through which that energy is transmitted, and then it hits the water, the energy. So basically, matter becomes the vehicle through which energy is traveling. Okay. So there is this action. The blow is given to the water. Next, the water rises and sends a reaction towards the stone. And that reaction takes the form of a wave. So how does that wave form? Is the water, the disturbance is a reaction to the energy that was imparted to it. First, the water vibrates a little and immediately sends back a reaction in the form of a wave. Let us compare the chitta to this lake, and the external objects are like the stones thrown into it. So here is the purpose of giving this analogy. So the chitta is like the lake. It's made of this water without any disturbance, let us say. And the external objects are like little stones thrown into it. How are they coming? Through what channel? Okay, they come through the eyes, they come through the ears, they come through the nose, they come through the tongue, they come through the uh, and skin, touch. So what we are receiving is only energy. Through the eyes, we are receiving light energy. Through the ears, we are receiving sound energy. Through the tongue, nose, we are receiving chemical energy. Through the skin, it could be heat energy or some touch, some vibration like tension, tactile, something is touching you. All those are so many forms of energy. Visualize that we are living in an ocean of energy, different forms of energy. In the process of evolution, as we grew up through whatever the bodies grew through the micro, what you call bacteria and whatever, protoplasm to these complex organisms that are animals and human beings, they evolved these various special devices through which energy could be captured and fed into the system so that we could perceive the world around. What are these devices? These are the eyes, ears, and the senses that are there. But what we are constantly taking out in is energy, energy from the spectrum of things around us. These are the five senses embedded in the physical body. Of course, there are other ways and other forms of energy are there. The thought energy are there, the emotional energies are there, what you call the aura of the person. And some people can sense that also. We also sense it. Maybe it's not so well articulated or developed in there, but sometimes we feel it also. Okay, you go to a nice, wonderful place where the energy is positive and your mind rises. You go to a funeral and you see the whole mind comes down. You're just that the frequency of the energy is sensed. So, so this is what is happening. The external world, what we call the world out there. We do not know the world. All we are perceiving is the energy coming from different sources, entering through these senses, going and disturbing the chitta, creating a little whirlpool, and then the mind creating a little wave, and the mind then reacts. So as soon as it comes in contact with any external object by means of these indriyas, the indriyas must be there to carry these external objects out, inside. If they're not there, like you close your eyes, then you can't see, or somebody is blind, some real defect is there, or there's a cataract or something, let us say. So the energy is not able to enter properly, and therefore the perception doesn't happen. So long, let us say the external organs are all good, it goes, energy flows inside there. As soon as it comes in contact with any external object by means of the indriyas must be there, to carry these things to these external objects inside. There must be, there is a vibration, that energy. This vibration is called manas. Okay, so we talked about the water in the lake, which is chitta. Some energy enters through the sensory system. It creates a wave, a disturbance, a vibration. That is called manas in the Sanskrit language. It's not the mind, the indecisive stage. Some reaction has been there. Next, so the reaction, of course, is there's a vibration. Next, there is a reaction. That means the mind now reacts to that action that came from outside. And that is the determinative faculty. That is the buddhi. And along with the buddhi flashes the idea of aham, I, and the external object. So all these things happen very quickly, but they happen in this sequence. In all that the totality of that sequence where some external energy entered through the indriyas, disturbed the chitta, created a vibration, and there was a reaction, which is the buddhi. And with that buddhi comes the recognition. Buddhi is the determinative faculty. That means trying to make a decision. Is this right or that is right? This is true, that is true. So how does it know? Well, it makes a comparison, and if it finds a match somewhere, then it says, aha, the penny has dropped, I recognize it. For example, you have seen somebody and filed away that image of that person's appearance and name in your mind. And the next time you see that person, the same image enters in your mind. And so, what would that be? So, in that process, when it is indecisive, that is called manas. Is it this person X or Y? Maybe still far away. I don't see all the traits, features there. But as they come closer, then it finds a match. Okay. And when that kicks in, that is called the buddhi. And buddhi says, this is Mr. X, so to so. And then along with that comes the idea of the ahams, this is, I recognize that person, or this is my friend, or so and so. All that happens so fast. Now, this is how the Vedic sages could analyze what is happening in a perception. Quite different from how the Western scientists are understanding. Yeah, she mean.
So, is the buddhi, sorry, the idea of aham, is that subjectivity, or is it I plus object? Is it the introduction of I, the subjective plus the object, or just the subject?
So the subject plus I amness is always there. Okay. But I am is linked to the outside thing. Okay. So it says, oh, I know. I was there all the time, sitting in its own wellness, and this wave came from outside, and uh, the reaction was there, and when the determinative faculty classifies it, then the inside knower says, I know. So that's where the connection happens. The internal part, that I-ness, actually comes from the knower or the Atman, the consciousness. That's why we always carry this I amness, I there from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. It is like the subjective entity. That's the knower. The outside thing came as known. When the knower and known sort of met together, that created a disturbance in the mind space, let us say, and that interference of the two energies, the internal from the knower and the external from the known, produces a disturbance which is called the manas. And when that disturbance, we call it in interference, it matches with the pre-existing something that was cognized before, and now it matches. So it's called, when it matches, then the person who steps in and says, this is the culmination of that perception, means I recognize. So at that moment, Shimain, this aham, I becomes locked to that perception.
Oh, thank you, Swamiji. That's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, it becomes involved, because until now it was just energy things happening from outside. So where do I get to the state like I'm part of it? Okay, the I amness joins at the last part of it, and you say, oh, I know, oh, I enjoy whatever is there. You become connected with it. So that is called ahankara. Okay, so Swamiji says, gives an
Maybe
example.
one question.
Mm.
Uh, See, without this external objects, right? So we need an external objects to feel the I-ness, right? Without the, like for example, in deep sleep, there are no objects, right? We don't feel the I. So you always need an external object to come into contact with external object to know the I amness, right, Swamiji?
So you see, well, you can have the internal object also, like you're just remembering things, daydreaming. Okay, so you're, instead of the signal coming from outside, it can be rising from your subconscious mind to the conscious mind, and you are thinking of those. And you say, I'm thinking, I'm planning, I'm visualizing, I'm understanding. Also, the I is there. What we understand from here is there is that pure I amness is not experienced. It requires something to attach itself for you to understand who you are. It's like, okay, how do you look? Okay, what does your face look like? You require something to reflect on, like a mirror or something, isn't it? The world is like the mirror. The thought is like the mirror, and you say, that's what I look like. But you are there all the time. If there are no mirrors, you still exist, but you do not know what you look like. So this world feeds us these impressions or thoughts or disturbances, and we become identified with that. And that's where our self-awareness is lost. And the perception, while it was trying to give us an idea of who we are, now has got messed up with our eye consciousness, and we become identified with that, like, or like what I see myself in the mirror, or whatever is this thought. You say, oh, I perceive this, I'm a perceiver. But really, the Atman is just pure light. uh, uh, it is there all the time. It requires some disturbance in the vritti, some disturbance in the chitta to experience itself in an objective way. All right.
Swamiji.
So let me finish this. So imagine when all the vrittis are removed, chitta vritti nirodha, then what happens? All reflectors are removed. All external sensory things are also shut down, and internal. Then at that time flashes that self-awareness of who I amness. Until then, it gets superimposed by this external change. Yes.
So, Swamiji, just a question, like continuation with that. So, which means like we need to remove all the thoughts and the world appearance to recognize our true nature. So it's only when we remove all those things we know our true nature, Swamiji.
Yes, so that's why the definition of yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. All the thoughts, waves in the mind space, if they're taken away, that doesn't take away our I-ness. Our I-ness was there. Remember, I-ness, aham is not a product. It's the inner light that I am there. So when I look at reflections, then I am not knowing myself. I know my reflection, see. But if there's no reflector, let us say, no vritti in the mind, at that moment comes that knowing the I in as it is. Until then, it is superimposed by that vritti. That's why if you want to understand all the psychology of it, self-realization means it's all about slowly shutting down all the disturbance from outside, then slowly getting a grasp of what is happening inside, controlling that through pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, to such a degree where one can make the mind absolutely waveless. And in that state, one becomes aware of nothing objective, but that subjective self that we are. That means that Atman or self-awareness, Atman awareness arises.
Okay, thanks, Swamiji.
Okay. So let's look at this thing. This one. Suppose a mosquito sitting upon my is there is a mosquito sitting upon my hand. This sensation is carried, so that mosquito sits there, maybe bites, and that little pain or that touch is carried through the organ of the senses, the skin, to my chitta, and it vibrates a little. This little vibration is called the manas. Then there is a reaction. and immediately comes the idea that I have a mosquito on my hand and I shall have to drive it off. So the reaction means is the recognition there's a mosquito. Okay, so the buddhi kicks and discriminate what is sitting on my head. Is it a fly or mosquito? See, so that the discriminative faculty comes there. Oh, this it's biting. So fly might not bite, but the mosquito bites, and so it's a mosquito. And so and then I jumps in and said, I recognize a mosquito, and that mosquito is not good sitting there biting me. And the reaction comes, the response comes that I have to drive it away. So Swamiji sort of gives that, sort of slow motion breakdown of what sort of tries to explain what's happening in the sequence. Thus, these stones are thrown into the lake. That means sensory energy inputs are there. But in the case of the lake, every blow that comes to it is from the external world. While in the case of the lake of the mind, the blows may come from the external world or the internal world. The internal world is here, whatever is stored there in the memory. And this whole series is what is called Antakarna. So it's a new topic, important. I would like you to go through this, read a few times, and draw some drawings and see if you can capture stage by stage process how this whole thing flows through. And later on, when we use these words like the antakarna or the manabuddhi chitta and ahankara, along with the indriyas, talking about the mind, then you'll have a clear idea of what we understand in Vedanta in the mind. Later on, we'll talk about, okay, this is the very traditional definition, understanding of the mind. Later on, Swamiji will talk about the akasha and prana, you see, and he will reconcile it with a bit more modern understanding that sort of makes more sense from our science point of view. So I think enough for today. Some good ideas are there for you to think, reflect, and digest. And we will take this up when we in our next Thursday class. If there are no more questions, then we will end here today. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tassat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.